So selfishly, I'm going to ask some questions for myself.
This is a shoulder injury?
And just hopefully that, or maybe.
Awesome, I'm in.
And maybe everyone else can get some benefit from it, some people. As a lifter, are there certain things that you can/should do to prevent you having to do a 90-minute session on someone who's as broken as I am?
Yeah, so I guess
It's like, are there I know it's not clear cut, like, do this and everyone should do it, but are there some commonalities that people can do to approach their training that, puts them in the best position to not get hurt?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing is probably just like lifting better, but then it's like, how do we? We'll just insert.
Just come fucking savagely, just bang in the ribs.
We'll insert a video of Jason lifting here. No.
Clip that, Tam. Clip that.
That's fucking hurt me. Yeah. Get better at lifting. Got it.
Yeah.
Right down. Yeah.
No, but then it's like, why can't you perhaps lift better? So it's like maybe you have a lack of mobility, which I know you probably do.
Hey, stop this. Stop that. I shouldn't ask this question.
You opened yourself up, bro.
This is getting personal.
Maybe more muscle mass, eh? Love that.
Yeah, so perhaps you need like more mobility or more stability. So it's obviously like, that's the cool thing about lifting, like we can always be better.
Yeah.
So whether it's like,
Absolutely.
we can always like refine technique, especially on the more compound movements. But yeah, I think mobility is a big thing, especially like you mentioned that the shoulder's an issue. So it's like if we don't have mobility through our upper back, like we're just going to be overloading things in the shoulder we don't want to overload.
Yeah.
And that's even when you see people like pressing and then they're feeling like their shoulder rather than their chest, and it's like they just can't get in the right position to work the muscle that we
Finally
want.
got to me. Fuck.
Yeah. Jump on the ship, mate. Sink in quickly.
To work the right muscle. So yeah, I think the right warm up is like very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe in an ideal, there's always, I guess, a bit of a debate whether warm ups are good, whether they're not good.
Yeah.
But I think, I guess in an ideal world, if someone's got perfect mobility, stability, maybe they don't need to warm up.
Yeah.
But I find even just a short, like 10-minute warm up, very specific to that person, it's going to both get them focused so they can leave the rest of the day behind, focus on their session, which means they're less likely to get injured. They're going to get better results in training. And then also it's like giving them the mobility or stability for what they need. So maybe you've been at home like doing online check-ins all day. It's like even with perfect posture, the body doesn't like being still. So it's like you're probably going to get tight through your upper back, and then we might not be able to get in the right positions to train. You're trying to do an overhead press, you actually can't get the range yourself, so then your upper traps are just going to kind of take over to get that extra range. Like we might get some shoulder niggles. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So more muscle doesn't help the problem. That's what we're...
More muscle's always the answer.
All right. Perfect. All right. Then you should have just said that at the start.
The loudest part of that was like, actually do a warm up.
Yeah. So maybe for some of the listeners like who heard the word mobility and then stability, it's like what are they? Which one comes first? Maybe we start there.
Yeah, cool. So mobility is somebody's active range of motion. So essentially it's just how far that they can move their body by themselves. And that's important so we can get full range of motion in the gym. Like if we're talking about the shoulder, if we can only get up like 3/4 range of motion, we only
What are you looking this way for?
Just looking behind you.
Yeah, cool. Thought so.
Then we kind of only want to load in that plane, so we wouldn't want to be doing any overhead presses. That's when we're more likely to get an injury. And also that's when we're likely to feel any muscles that you're not trying to target by that exercise. So to be less effective for the reason of the exercise being in your program, and then you're more likely to get injured as well.
So what's the difference, mobility to flexibility?
So flexibility is someone's passive range of motion. So rather than Jason moving his arm up this far, it would be me moving his arm. And then like if I can move it a little bit further, that's like typically I'll be able to move it further and he'll only be restricted by his like the range of motion in his joint. Whereas when he's moving it, his muscle tightness is having an impact on how far he can move it. Yeah. And so for gym, active range of motion is obviously a lot more relevant because in the gym, you're moving your body. I'm not going to be in there moving your arm for you.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of people that get confused between the two, that go into the gym to try and improve flexibility, but miss the actual mobility part.
Yeah. And then then stability. So that's like, I guess, your ability to control. So it's like your ability to resist external forces. Yeah. Yep. And another reason we want not flexibility. Another reason we want mobility is so we can actually challenge stability too. So we'll come back to the shoulder because we've been talking about that. The most unstable position for the shoulder is that full overhead position. So a lot of the time, if we're restricted going into that position, it's our body trying to not allow us to go there because it doesn't feel safe going there perhaps. So if we want to train stability so our body does feel safe there so we can have that carryover. Otherwise, if we just increase more range of motion, we're still unstable in that position, the body's going to tighten up so we can't get there. So we need to increase range of motion to get the arm back there, but then we need to increase the stability in that position, in that unstable position, so that the carryover of mobility carries over for longer. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Do you see a trend of like most people will be one or the other? So like they'll either be super mobile but have really poor stability.
Floppy or stiffy.
Yeah, or vice versa. Yeah.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah.
The hypermobility is probably seen more in females. And obviously they'll just have like excessive range of motion. So that's not just full range of motion, it's kind of like past like normal ranges. And for them, quite often they will be unstable. So for them, it's kind of teaching them to just train within like the normal range of motion, and then it's getting them stability so they can control themselves like in that range of motion. Otherwise you do get people who are quite stiff.
It's something I changed in my coaching a while ago now, like particularly the girls coming through. What we used to do is like do a conventional, do a sumo, tell me which one feels better. And the girls would always choose the sumo because it's like I can load in structure, feel a little bit stronger, because they didn't have the ability to actually create the tension themselves on the bar in the conventional. So it was like all of a sudden every single girl I was training was sumoing. I was like, this doesn't make sense.
What's happening?
So pulled it back and I was like, oh, you just don't have the ability to create tension. So now I actually go full the other way. Like, don't even think about sumo until you can pull body weight. Then we'll look at it because you've actually got the strength underneath to be able to leverage whatever position's better for you. So being aware of that stuff as a coach is really important too, and as a lifter, like if you're trying to load into structure because you don't have stability for the girls, and then guys like just avoiding always doing incline press and never overhead work because you don't have the
60-degree incline all day, baby.
It's interesting.
So if you walk into the gym, how do you know you don't have the mobility for that particular joint for that particular day?
I guess that's where different warm-ups or gatekeeper exercises could be handy. So, with the shoulder, you could even just walk in and kind of like test yourself by lifting your arm overhead. Or stuff so with the hips, like one of the exercises we commonly prescribe is a prone leg lift. So where you're lying on your tummy, legs bent, and you're just going into hip extension. And it's like if you have tight hips, you're probably just going to feel that in your lower back because your hip isn't extending, so your back's just going to be extending. Or the hamstring will just be firing to try and help extend the hip because you're not really in a position where your glute can work. So sometimes I prescribe exercises like that, perhaps for like a certain rep range, but I say to someone like, if you're doing this and you're feeling in the wrong spot or you're feeling tighter than usual because you've been sitting longer than usual through the day or whatever that's happened, maybe then you just need to go and foam roll a little bit like through your hammy or through the front of your hip or wherever we found's tight for that person. So it's almost like, as well as a warm-up, it's almost a gatekeeper exercise as well. Or say, you're doing your clams and you're only getting like a quarter range of what you normally get. It's like, oh, you're a little bit tight. You should probably release that a little bit before you do train.
So it's like if this, then that type thing. So it's not do this every time. It's like you might go and do that exercise to assess how things feel. And then if you feel good, get into your workout. But if you don't feel good, go do this instead. That's going to... Like the one thing I found is like some days I can just walk in and I'm like, move around a little bit. I'm feeling good. Off we go. And then other days I'm like, if I'm going to train today, maybe. And I know already I can just feel that it's going to take 15 minutes to get going. I'm just fucking so tight from just being in the car and all of that. So it's like you don't want to have to spend 15-20 minutes every session warming up if you don't have to. But you also want to have like a sequence of steps to in case you need to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're the sessions you get hurt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like as well, so like cat camels even is a common one I'll prescribe for like upper body or lower body. And obviously when you're doing that for upper body, you're trying to get as much like shoulder protraction, retraction as you can. And as you do it and you get to know your body, it's like you can kind of feel if that's really jammed, like I'm not really getting much range. So then it's like, cool, I'll either do an extra couple of sets of those or like foam roll through my mid back and then do them again. So it's like, yeah, there is like those certain prehab movements. You get to know like your body's range and what range you need to feel good in the gym. But I guess also if you're aware of how your body feels, like maybe you hop straight onto the bench press or whatever your first exercise is. It's like maybe you feel that you actually can't get your shoulders in the right position. Like I actually can't squeeze my shoulders back to stabilize for the bench. Cool, I just warmed up with the bar, but maybe I'll go do a few warm-up exercises before I do my next warm-up set and then just keep doing that. So we're not taking too much time, but we can get in the right position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does and this can be an anecdotal thing for everybody. What's up, guys? Welcome to the STCfit podcast, where we talk about all things nutrition, training, and how to live your best life. If you want some more information about coaching, our free resources, and other fitness-related content, be sure to check us out on our website at www.stcfit.com. All right, let's get to the episode. Like, does your mobility and active range of motion and stuff change the bigger you get? Or is it just your ability to maintain that stimulus that drops off? Because, like, you know, you hear people say, like, under full anesthesia, like, I could do the splits. And then it's like, okay, so when we're conscious, like, it's a nervous system controlled, you know, situation. So then that would mean that the muscle mass doesn't play a role. But do you think it does? Do you know it does? And have you felt it yourself?
It definitely does come into play. Like if we're thinking about looking at someone's shoulder external rotation range, like the more muscle mass they have, like especially through their lats, quite a large muscle, that is going to limit their ability to externally rotate.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, like the lat being an internal rotator. So yeah, like muscle mass I find definitely does come into play with mobility. You can still make a very positive change and you can still get like good range of motion with it.
Yep.
But yeah, it definitely does change the assessment.
Yeah. So then if you're working with someone over time, it's like, especially if they're putting on a significant amount of weight, it's something to consider when, you know, say they start at 70 kilos and everything's, you know, nimble and where it needs to be. It's like if they're 85 kilos, you know, 12 months later, 18 months later, it's like using that previous range is probably not that realistic anymore. It's like a spectrum of that range is definitely what we want to do, but you can't go, oh, you were doing this previously, you should do it now.
Yeah, things definitely change.
Yeah.
And I guess something we look at a therapist as well is like the difference in mobility side to side. So we're looking for like discrepancies as well.
Yeah.
As well as their overall mobility too.
Yeah. Is that common? Like changes in mobility from left side to right side, like, you know, arms, legs, you know, hips, ankles? Yeah,
it is. Well, it's quite common in here. Obviously, we mainly see people with injury, or we'll start to see people with injury, then we might see people for more maintenance. But yeah, in regards to injury, usually there is a discrepancy, side to side. Yep.
Going back to the mobility as you get bigger thing, I feel like a lot of it's a training adaptation too. So like you would feel too, like during prep, it's like you're a fucking rock come the last 4 weeks of prep. And then you jump out and you go into more movement variety and it's like, I can wash my own back again and put my seatbelt on. This is great.
Yeah.
So I think a bit of it is probably your coping mechanism to the training, particularly like for a powerlifter. Your job is to be as rigid as you possibly can and only move through those ranges. Yeah. Bodybuilders obviously have a little bit more, I guess, scope in terms of their movement patterns in their training, so it's less visible. But I know myself, the first time I got to 90 kilos, I couldn't put my seatbelt on. Yeah. And now I'm still back at 90 kilos and I feel how I did at 80, if that makes sense. My car
gives me my seatbelt. Very happy about that. It's like, thank you, sir. No external rotation needed.
Yeah, but anecdotally introducing different and more movement variety at the same body weight with the same muscle mass, totally different person with a different training style.
Yeah.
So I think there's the adaptation to the training is definitely plays a big role. And I think the first time you get to a body weight, that stress is way different to having been there or even going past it and pulling back a little bit.
Yeah. And that'd be important for you guys to know. It's like if you go and sit with somebody and you're like, okay, why are you here and what do you do? And then they're like, oh, I'm 6 weeks out from my meet. Like that's going to influence how you assess them and how you treat them, right? Because it's like
Different
that
tolerances.
adaptation right there is
Yeah.
going to suggest, like, because of this hyper specificity in the program, this person is tight. This person is doing, heaps of internally rotated dominant exercises. Like, you're not going to, you would treat that person differently to someone who's just like, oh, I'm just a lifestyle client who wants to get strong, right?
Yeah. That's where you've got to look at the person in front of you, because it's like even if someone was a gymnast, like obviously they need a lot more range of motion. But even in just like powerlifting versus bodybuilding, things will be different.
Don't pit us against this already. It's too early in the morning. Okay.
But yeah, you can definitely change your range of motion just by, I guess, accessing that full range of motion in the gym. So yeah, obviously, like if you're lifting in a very restricted range of motion, like that's just where your body's going to get used to moving. Whereas, yeah, if you might need to do a mobility exercise to access a position, but then like if you're actually loading it in those positions, you're more likely to keep that mobility.
Yeah.
Yeah. So training itself can almost be mobility. Like, have you ever been tight from working like at the computer, like doing your online check-ins and stuff, and then like you go to the gym, you do a back session, and it's like, oh, I can sit up better, like I've got so much more movement through my shoulders. It's like we've just moved our shoulders through range of motion, we've got some blood flow, so that's kind of been a mobility exercise in itself.
Right.
Yeah.
We talk about it in our programming, trying to put like, sometimes we quantify it, sometimes we don't, just like X amount of function-based movements. Like function's a weird one, but I think after the workshop, we agreed that it was basically walking, breathing, and throwing. So anything that contributes to your ability to do that is like a functional exercise. So it's like, well, how much of that do you put in your program? So it's like, for Jace, it's like a single leg glute bridge, maybe not the best exercise to build glutes, but it gets a good pump and it's really good for hip extension. Or even like half kneeling landmine press. Like you're not getting bolder shoulders doing a half kneeling landmine press, but if you put it in as a trainable exercise, people are accessing range of motion, accessing stability that then carries over to the shoulder press they have to do 3 days later or whatever. So it's an interesting way of, like you said, making training prehab as well inside the program.
Yeah. But yeah, the landmine press is an interesting one, like, because I think not many exercises kind of target that reach in the gym. Like obviously a lot of exercises are like shoulders down and back. So something like that will benefit the shoulder health. So it's like that might be preventing an injury down the track, which is going to make them regress from having to drop load or whatever. So I think those like functional exercises through the training program are definitely beneficial. Yeah. Obviously, depending on the specificity at the time. Yeah.
I find it's like the best. Well, I don't want to say the best. The easiest to put in for powerlifters. It's just like just once a week. Just do that. Just don't be here just once a week. Just some other fucking variable. Yeah.
So if we split things up to upper and lower, and you talk about these gatekeeper movements, in your opinion, which ones would you put just blanketly across the board for listeners at home?
Oh, good question. Perhaps I'm going to say for the upper body, it would be like a cat camel.
Yep.
And like just mainly for the thoracic. So you're mainly trying to get that protraction, retraction, keeping your elbows straight. You can also do this in a bird dog position as well, which can give you a lot more data too if you're able to get in that position. And like I feel like that's probably the most important one for upper body, because also if our shoulders can't protract, retract properly, like if we kind of a little bit jammed through that mid back, we're probably not going to be able to access that overhead mobility anyway, because that rhomboid will kind of be stopping you from getting overhead, the tightness there. I'd say that's probably the most important one for upper body. And then lower body, if we're doing like a deadlift kind of or hinging session, I'd say it would be the prone leg lift, because obviously that's more a session of hip extension. So we need to be able to access that range. Whereas if it was a squat, we're probably looking at something more like hip flexion. I don't know what exercise would be the gatekeeper, but a psoas march is a good one. Have you done that before? Yeah. So kind of, because obviously we want to access deep hip flexion, but like actively rather than just letting the bar force us down. They would be the three gatekeepers.
I use a 90-90 a lot.
Yeah,
for the hip.
okay.
Like, at least for me, I know that's going to be, I'll feel it there and know that the session's going to be shit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not necessarily in that deep hip flexion. But yeah, going through an active 90-90. Bad days, I can't even do it.
Yeah.
Good days, it's like nice and easy. And then in between, it's like it pinches or whatever. And it's like, okay, I need to go do some other stuff.
And for lower body, even... Like, it sounds so basic, but even walking. So it's like, if you just walk, you'll be able to kind of know if your hips are tight. Like, if you're getting a back pump walking, like, you probably need to do some work on your hips. Like, but also, like, regardless if you're getting a back pump or not, it's like you'll kind of be able to feel if things feel tight or, So maybe... It's like coming back to the functional things, like the basics. It's like walking is so important for the body. Like it's moving our hips through range of motion. We're accessing that hip extension. It can be quite decompressive for the back. Obviously, we're getting some rotation through the upper body as well. Shoulder extension. So, even just simple things like walking. But I guess like the more someone trains and the more they get to know their body, the easier it is as well to know if you're feeling a little bit restricted that day. And that's where it's good to work with the niche we work with too, because they're quite aware of their body. So it's like they're normally quite aware of what's causing them pain or when they feel it.
Yeah.
So I guess like our population of lifters, they can kind of tune into the fact that they are aware of their body. So it's like pay attention when you're walking. Like, do you feel a bit tighter than usual? Maybe you need to go do some activations or foam roll.
Yeah. That's interesting.